Hello and welcome to All You Can Board. I'm Carlo and today I'm going to be talking about 7 new games I'm excited about. So these aren't games that are actually currently released in retail. These are upcoming games. Some of these have been announced just in the past couple days or past few weeks or whatnot. Others might have already been funded on whatever crowdfunding platform they were on, whether that be Kickstarter or GameFound. So some of these are coming out later this year. Others might be 2023. But either way, these are just games that are, I've heard about fairly recently and definitely going to be keep my eye on these, whether it's, something to buy or at least just try at some point later this year or next year. So we're going to jump right in with the first game, and I will mention real quick that of these 7 games, 4 of them, oddly enough, are sort of sequels or follow-up games to other recent games. So, and the first one on the list today is My Island. So this is designed by Reiner Knizia and published by Cosmos, and this is of course a follow-up to My City, which was the Polyomino legacy game from Reiner Knizia that did extremely well. So there isn't a whole lot of info out about the game just yet. The stats on BGG show pretty similar, 2 to 4 players, 30 minutes per session kind of thing. Seems like it plays over 24 games again, just like the previous one. I don't think it clarified whether it's the 8 chapters or whatever they're called with 3 games each under the rules, if they change just after every 3 games. So I'm not sure if the structure will follow exactly the same way as My City, but the biggest sort of change that we know of so far is the fact that instead of using polyomino shaped tiles in the original one, this is using hex based. So they're all 6-sided tiles. There could still be some polyomino action going on. I don't really know for sure. Again, there aren't really a whole lot of photos or details out about this as of the time I'm filming this game or filming this video. But yeah, the main thing that intrigues me is just how much I enjoyed My City. Dylan and I played through the entire campaign together, and we're big fans of Reiner Knizia. If you watch our channel regularly, that's no surprise to you. But My City really did surprise us at how much it did with what seemed like it was going to be very bare bones, simple rules. The fact that they changed up from game to game and you're doing this spatial puzzle where you and your opponent or opponents are kind of doing the same thing. You're being given the same tiles every turn to work with, but your boards over the course of each game and more long-term just change and evolve in a way that are different from player to player. And you've got these kind of overarching goals across the campaign. Each game is quick and snappy, so it was just really enjoyable to sit down, and a lot of the time we played through one chapter, one envelope at a time under that set of rules, 3 games, so that if you do it that way, it gives you 8 pretty full feeling sessions, and then of course the game can be played at the end in its kind of final form. We haven't gone back to do that with My City. I don't know if My Island will have a more intriguing kind of, I guess, final end game state where you'll want to come back and play under just the base rules, but it's pretty much all we know about it so far. Slated for a 2022 release. This is one that we will definitely be trying to get our hands on a copy of, and we'll probably speak about on the channel at some point in the future. The theme and the artwork looks like it might be a little bit of a step up too, compared to My City, just in terms of, I don't know, it looks a little bit more immersive to me, the whole island theme, but either way, that is My Island. So next up on the list here is Sleeping Gods Distant Skies. So this is of course the follow-up game to Sleeping Gods, designed by Ryan Lawcat, published by Red Raven Games. So Distant Skies is a standalone follow-up game. So I know some people have referred to it online. You might see some people calling it an expansion, but it is not. Someone from Red Raven has been very clear on there that the word expansion should not be associated with Distant Skies in any way because it is its own standalone game. There's a lot of crossover, of course. There's story elements that are going to carry over from the first one to Distant Skies, but you don't need to have played the first one. There's going to be concepts that are familiar from the first one to the next one, so it might be easier to jump in, but you can just go right into Distant Skies without knowing anything about the original game. So this one's going to be set in San Francisco in the 1930s, and basically you have the idea behind the story is that your cargo plane goes through a portal in the sky into another dimension, into another realm with magical beasts and all kinds of stuff, and you have to get back through the portal into the real world before the portal closes on you, basically. So they've gone and reworked the combat system a little bit. They've reduced the number of characters. If you remember in the base Sleeping Gods game, the Manticore had, I believe it was 8 or 9 characters. So regardless of the player count, let's say you were playing solo or 2 players, you were still managing that number of characters. And so the fewer players, if you're playing solo or 2 players, you have a lot of characters to manage. In this one, they've slimmed it down to just 5 characters. So the idea is that each character is going to be more powerful, have more stuff that they can get done, but there's just fewer characters so that you have fewer different things to sort of divide your attention between. And I don't know, I like that change. I think as much as I appreciated the kind of seeing the differences between all the characters, I think it will make the puzzles that you have to solve with combat and things like that, and just the exploration, I think it's going to make it a little more focused and a little easier to manage, especially when you are playing solo or with 2 players. It's also going to make you, they've said it's going to make you interact with the Atlas a little more, camping, exploring, overcoming obstacles, and there's basically a new action point system that is designed to give players a little more agency, a little more control, compared to the shipboard thing that was in the original Sleeping Gods. The accuracy aspect of combat has been removed, which I like that. I think, not to say that the accuracy worked poorly, but it just felt like another sort of obstacle standing in your way, another thing to have to calculate and account for. And the fact that it's been removed, I think, will just maybe make, maybe streamline it a little more. And, what I think a lot of these changes seem to do is sort of take a bit away from the part where you're staring at the board trying to figure out what's the most optimal way, or overcome something that might be a little bit fiddly in the rules. And it seems like it's going to place the focus a bit more on the exploration and the story, which is, I've played a bit of the original Sleeping Gods now. We've played 1 session of the campaign, and we're really enjoying it. And the story and the kind of world building is my favorite part. It's the most immersive. It's what the game is really all about. And so I like that it seems like a lot of these changes have been done to kind of, streamline and make everything else a little more focused and, just a little cleaner so that you can kind of focus a little more on the story. And yeah, it is even advertised the playtime, like the base Sleeping Gods had a max playtime of 1,200 hours, or sorry, minutes, hours, 1,200 minutes, and this one says 600 minutes. That's half the time. So I do believe I remember seeing that Red Raven had mentioned previously that they weren't going to make another game as big as Sleeping Gods. So it does seem, again, with fewer characters, shorter playtime. Who knows if the map will be slimmed down a little bit too, but I think it's going to be a bit more of a manageable game. And of course, Sleeping Gods, the original, was in development for quite some time. Distant Skies is going to be on GameFound in April, so next month, and is slated to release in 2023, so we will definitely be trying to get our hands on a copy of this. Hopefully we'll be done our original Sleeping Gods campaign by then, but yeah, that is Sleeping Gods Distant Skies. Alright, next up is a game called Andromeda's Edge. So this is designed by Luke Laurie and published by Cardboard Alchemy. So you might recognize the name Luke Laurie from last year's Dwellings of Eldervale. He's also been designed either on his own or co-designed a lot of other great games like Cryo. He's done Whistle Mountain, which I haven't actually played yet. He's done the Manhattan Project, Energy Empire. He's has had his name on a lot of games, especially in the past couple of years. And Andromeda's Edge is basically being touted as Dwellings of Eldervale in space. So it's a fairly recent announcement. There isn't a whole lot of info out there about the game yet, but similarly to Dwellings of Eldervale, and I'll say right now, I don't know a whole lot about the actual rules of Dwellings of Eldervale. It's been out of stock everywhere for so long that I just haven't really looked into it a whole lot recently. But in Andromeda's Edge, you're going to have it's worker placement, and your workers are these sort of upgradable starships. And you're going to have your own player board, which represents like a star base, and you're going to have these sort of modular things that you can add on to your base that are going to allow you to do different things. And this game is supposed to be a bit heavier in terms of the rules complexity than Dwellings of Eldervale, of course set in space, as I mentioned, but the main thing is that it's going to have more of a focus on engine building. And that's mainly to do with your little player board and the modules that you're adding to it that allow you to kind of build up this engine and chain things together as the game goes on. Again, there aren't a whole lot of details about it yet. There's, it does mention you're building a new civilization. You're going to be advancing on tracks. Each player has a different faction from the start of the game. It's not a fully asymmetric game. It's not like something like Root where you're playing by completely different rules, but think more like a variable player power, so a lot of the things I'm talking about, the tracks, the civilization, the different factions, engine building, a lot of the things we've seen in different games, but it seems like this is trying to sort of take a new fresh spin on what they did with Dwellings of Eldervale. I remember hearing that some people had some issues with the combat in Dwellings of Eldervale, and that's been tweaked a little bit and reworked for Andromeda's Edge here. So for anyone who either really liked Dwellings of Eldervale and might want the sci-fi theme, or might have had certain issues with the game, or wanted something a little heavier, or focuses on engine building, this might be the perfect step up for you. And if you're one of the people, one of the many people, I should say, who missed out on Dwellings of Eldervale due to limited copies out there, I don't know if they're planning on doing another reprint anytime soon or whatnot. So this might actually be, if you're not able to get your hands on Dwellings of Eldervale, you're going to want to keep an eye out for the Game Found campaign for this game, for Andromeda's Edge, and it's slated to release in 2023. So not a whole lot more we know about it yet, but I will definitely be keeping my eye on that. Again, that is Andromeda's Edge. Oh, and I should mention it's 1 to 5 players, and it's listed at 200 minutes max, 40 to 200, so 40 minutes per player. Next up is a game called Maul Peak. So this is the fourth and final one on the list that is sort of a follow-up to another game. So this is designed by Keith Matejka, pardon me if I mispronounced that, and Eduardo Baraf, and published by Pencil First Games. So this is a follow-up to Skulk Hollow, which was from, I believe, 2018 or 2019. Skulk Hollow was a 2-player only game modeled sort of after a video game called Shadow of the Colossus, where you're, you ride around on a horse and you find these big bosses, the big Colossus, and you have to find a way to, first off, even, climb the Colossus and get to its weak points and, stab it in the arm or get up and climb on its head and do something. It was part of the whole thing in that video game was finding out how to even access the weak points of this giant Colossus to be able to eventually bring it down. So Skulk Hollow put you, it's asymmetric. One player is playing as the Foxen heroes, and the other player picks one of the 4 Guardians, which are these giant beasts, and basically you're playing against each other. The Guardian's trying to either defeat all the Foxen heroes or achieve its objective, or the Foxen heroes are trying to basically defeat the giant Guardian. So in Maul Peak, it's its own standalone game. It still has the similar thing where there's 4 Guardians that you can play as, or on the opposite side, instead of the Foxen heroes from Skulk Hollow, now you have I believe they're called the Grizzar. It's a tribe of bears, basically. So the interesting thing about this is that you're going to be able to combine both games together, so you can mix and match and either, play with the Foxen against any of the new Guardians, or you can play with the bears against some of the old Guardians, vice versa. You can mix and match them in any way you want, or you can play on a map, the terrain from the new game with the old characters and whatever. Plus, now you can play up to 4 players because you can combine boxes and do kind of what they call the epic battle, where, 2 players are playing as the 2, whatever you want to call them, the good guys, the foxes and the bears, and you're going to be trying to defeat 2 Guardians at once. So normally in these games, I'm not as interested in when there's like a team mode, like a 4-player mode when the game is primarily 2. But in this one, there's something about it that sounds a little more intriguing to me. That's something I'm definitely going to check out. I own Skulk Hollow. I've only had a chance to play it once so far. I did enjoy it quite a bit, but I haven't gone back to it in a little while now. And I think Maul Peak is a good way, like when you have a game like this that has a limited number of, factions or whatever that you can play as, having some more options sometimes just keeps it a little fresh and gives you more incentive to go back and play it again. So from what I understand, it's fairly similar in terms of the way the game actually plays, but they have placed a focus on kind of improving the late game stall outs. So basically any stalemate situations where you're, going back and forth and not much progress is happening, or where you're trying to keep drawing cards from your deck to look for a certain card. That was their main focus, was kind of improving where the game might slow down when these sort of that attrition type of battle comes into play. So otherwise, it's got, it's more of like a winter or ice kind of theme and look to it. Otherwise, the game looks pretty similar. It's definitely one I'm interested in checking out and comparing with Skulk Hollow. It'd be nice to have it in my collection to be able to kind of mix and match both games together. That one is slated for a 2022 release, and the Kickstarter actually goes live April 5th, so it's just coming right up, so keep an eye out for that. Again, that is Maul Peak. All right, next up on the list, game number 5 that I'm excited about is Autobahn. So this is co-designed by Fabio Lopiano and Nestore Mangione, and this is published by Alley Cat Games. So I haven't actually played any of the games from either of these designers, but Fabio Lopiano has designed Kalamala as well as Merv, The Heart of the Silk Road, which are 2 games I've really wanted to try. And Nestore Mangione has designed Newton, and he's also co-designed Darwin's Journey, which is one of my most anticipated games of this year. So I'm really interested in what these designers have done previously, just haven't had a chance to play any of their games yet. But this is a game for 1 to 4 players. It's listed as about 90 to 150 minutes. The weight is 3.6. From what I've seen on there, it sounds a little bit like something like Imperial Steam, where it's an economic game where the economy is the most important part, but you're sort of building routes and networks across, and basically As you might have surmised based on the title of the game, it's about the Autobahn highways in Germany. So it is set in Germany, and it's basically Concordia-style hand management game where you have 7 cards in your hand, 1 of each color, and each of the cards represents a network or an area of the board. And basically when you play a card, it stays out in front of you, and you're playing through your hand of cards. Once you've played all 7 cards, you'll get them back and kind of refresh. But there's also ways that, after you've only played a couple cards, you can actually spend a turn to just get your cards back and you get income. So there's this interesting decision of, do you want to actually try playing all 7 of your cards to automatically get them back for free? Or do you want to spend a turn taking certain cards back earlier on? And then you have those 7 cards that you can upgrade throughout the game. So, your red card might be able to upgrade into a different, more powerful red card. Your orange card or whatever the colors are that you can upgrade. So you're kind of trying to decide throughout the game how to upgrade your hand to increase your capabilities of the actions that you can take as you're kind of branching out. You're going to be building the German motorway system over 3 eras between World War II up to present day, basically. And there's going to be 3 scoring sessions that happen, one at the end of each of those eras throughout the game. And yeah, you're basically building roads, transporting goods, building gas stations, gaining seats on the administration boards to increase your budget and so on. So when I mentioned the comparisons to Imperial Steam, it just made me think, again, the economy of the game, the fact that you're trying to just make money, squeeze out, these little incremental advantages wherever you can, but it's all done over this kind of competing network of spaces with the other players. Each player has an objective from the start of the game, and there's some kind of shared incentives where you kind of sometimes are incentivized to work together with the player to make sure something gets done so that it benefits you both. And then you're basically trying to just get on the highways that are connected to other highways, but people can bump you off of there. I haven't played Hansa Teutonica yet. It's on my shelf of shame at home. But it sounds like there's a bit of that element with the going somewhere and then getting someone to bump you off and taking your spot. So I really like these highly interactive Euros. This is something that honestly a couple of years ago might not have interested me, and Imperial Steam kind of opened my eyes to what an economic game with route building can be. I don't play a lot of those or haven't played a lot of them yet, but based on how impressed I was with Imperial Steam, I've definitely got my eye on Autobahn, especially thanks to the sort of pedigree of these designers. So yeah, that's definitely one I will be checking out, and it's set to release in 2022. Essen in 2022 is supposed to be the official release date, so that's at the end of the year, but there might still be a crowdfunding campaign soon from what I can see. Again, that is Autobahn. All right, next on the list is a game called Empire's End. So this is designed by John D. Clare, who does tons of games with AEG, Dead Reckoning, Mystic Vale, Cubitos. He's done tons of games. This one's being published through Brotherwise Games, though. And this is a 2 to 4 player game that plays in about 45 to 60 minutes. And you're basically trying to save your civilization from disaster in this game. And there's some interesting kind of auction bidding type stuff going on, similar to games like No Thanks or For Sale or that sort of thing. It's more similar to No Thanks, I would say. But basically, players will be facing, like, a common disaster will come up on the board, okay? A disaster will present itself to all players. It might be like a flood or barbarians have arrived or something like that. And you're basically bidding to not take the disaster. So you'll say, like, I don't want to face that disaster, so I'll bid this. And then the next player is going to bid to say, I don't want that disaster either. You're going to keep bidding, and then basically whoever ends up getting stuck with the disaster, let's say I pass and say I don't want to outbid, I'm going to take the disaster, but I'm going to gain all the other bids that everyone else wanted, or that everyone else made, because nobody wanted the cards. Everyone kept saying, I'll pay this, so I don't have to take it. I'll pay this, so I don't have to take it. So whoever ends up taking it gets all of those resources. So it's an interest, but then you alone have to face the consequences of that disaster. So it's offsetting how much am I willing to gain for the detriment that this disaster will bring me, right? So it sounds really interesting. I always love that mechanic. I love these games that have that valuation of, it's not entirely clear. It's not just a trade-off of, if I go here, I get this many points, or if I go there, I get this many points, so I'm going to do the thing that gets us more points. No, there's going to be long-term consequences from these disasters, but it gives you that influx of resources that you can, potentially improve your game state earlier on with. So really interesting stuff to consider there. And one of the things that kind of lists as one of the selling points seems to be that with each disaster, your people become more resilient and more wise. And so again, that's from the things that you gain, so you become better equipped to deal with future disasters. So it kind of shifts, what people are going to be bidding on throughout the game, or how much they're willing to spend based on what they have or what has or hasn't come out. Really cool stuff. There's other stuff that has been mentioned that kind of sounds like it might be familiar from other games, like producing goods. There's a military phase where you kind of combat your opponents and that kind of thing. Otherwise, there's not a whole lot more information out about the game just yet. It's slated to release in 2022, but again, I just always love these games where you're going around trying to determine the value of something, and one player is going to get stuck with the garbage that nobody else wants. And the fact that it's done with like kind of a civilization theme, like normally those games like For Sale and No Thanks are just kind of a loose theme. It's usually just about how much money do you have at the end of the game, or what's your total number of points from these cards or whatever. And I like that this sounds like it takes that but does something a little more complex. So yeah, this is definitely one I'm very interested in, will be keep my eye out for. That is Empire's End. Okay, and the last game I want to talk about in today's video is called Soundbox. This is very different from all the games I've talked about today. This is a cooperative party game. Sounds like it's going to be hilarious to play. So it's 4 to 7 players. It plays in about 30 to 45 minutes. This already had a successful crowdfunding campaign and should actually be delivering to backers in the coming months. So of all the games that I've talked about here, this is the one that's closest to hitting retail. It should be accessible, or pardon me, available relatively soon. So this is co-designed by Hjalmar Hach, pardon me if I've mispronounced that, and Lorenzo Silva, and this is published by Horrible Guild. So I want to mention that part of the thing that intrigues me about this game right away is the design team, because the games that these guys have designed together, it's almost the equivalent of, you know, when I talk about Vlada Kavatil on his own designing all kinds of different games, Codenames, Dungeon Pets, Through the Ages, like the kind of range. This is almost like the design team equivalent, where these guys together have done stuff like Potion Explosion, they've done Railroad Inc., they've done King's Dilemma, I guess Queen's Dilemma as well, which will be coming out in the future. So quite the range on these designers, and now they're going into this cooperative party game that's entirely based on making sounds. So the way it works is basically you're going to be rotating every round. One player is going to be the guesser, and all the other players are going to be the sound makers. There's basically going to be a bunch of cards put out on the table, more cards than there are players. I don't know exactly how many more. And you're going to basically be dealt out a little token that's going to refer, so that you know, and you can't tell the other players if you're the sound maker, you're going to get a token that basically tells you which of the cards is for you this round. So you're going to look at that card, and the card is going to describe a sound. So this is going to be anything. It's going to be wild. I don't even know what's on the cards. I'll just make up some random examples. Maybe one might say like... you know, an elephant playing a xylophone. They're going to be these obscure random sounds that are going to be on these cards, and basically all the players who get these tokens are going to have to look and decide, and you're going to have to think to yourself, what kind of sound effect am I going to have to make? Once everyone is ready, there's a 13-second timer that you flip over, and at the same time, all the sound makers are just making the sound effects that were described on their cards, all at the same time, and the guesser is trying to listen to all the sounds and carefully decipher like which sound is coming from which person, what does that sound mean, kind of thing, while looking at the cards. And then after that timer is up, the guesser, you know, the sound makers can't say anything, and the guesser has to basically look at the cards and try to remember and identify, okay, when you made that sound, that was for this card, and when you made that sound, that must have been for this card over here. And for every one that you get right, you get a point, and as soon as you get one wrong, you basically like bust, you lose the round, or that's it for the round. So there's almost like a push your luck aspect where, and an assessment of how, you know, start with the ones you're most confident in, get those easy points locked in first, because as soon as you get one wrong, you're done. So you're trying to see how many of these you can get right, and then it's going to pass, and the next player will be the guesser in the next round. It's, you know, I don't think the point system, again, it's going to be similar to games like Just One and Wavelength and that kind of thing, where you're, you know, playing this cooperative game, but like the points might not matter that much. You might just keep playing round after round just because you're having a good time, but yeah, either way, the scoring in these games doesn't tend to be super important, but I just love these kind of games that are, you know, again, these high player count party games that do something novel, that get people interacting and laughing, and just like, I don't know, this is one I can't wait to try. I don't know what kind of legs it's going to have long term. You know, I got to see what kind of like stack of cards and what the noises are like, and, you know, how does it actually feel when you're actually experiencing it at the table. But it just sounds like a blast to play and something I definitely want to try out. Again, that is Soundbox, and as I mentioned, it should be hitting retail within the next few months, hopefully. So that's it. Those are the 7 games I had to talk about today. Let me know what you think about them. I'm curious, do any one of these in particular stand out to you? Are there other games I might have missed that we haven't covered? You know, we tend to do one of these videos featuring new games. Lately, we're trying to do them once a month if there's enough games that we're excited about. So could be that, you know, the games that you're excited about we might have mentioned in previous videos. Could be ones that we're, you know, considering for future videos. Either way, let me know what you think of these ones that I mentioned today. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.